This week on the Red Sneakers Writers Podcast.
What you want to do is write one page a day. That's all. If you write one page a day, you've written a novel in a year. And it teaches you the most important thing, which is actually to get something written. So many people who say they want to be writers are not necessarily interested in the procedure of writing. They're interested in having done it.
Welcome to our second Red Sneaker Writers live podcast featuring interviews, news, writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, Red Sneaker Writers. Good to see everybody back for, like Jesse was saying, our second ever attempt to enter the modern world of video and live stream and, be cool like the cool kids. Of course, the only reason we're doing this for the second time is because it seemed to actually work the first time around. No major technical gaffes or snafus. And that is totally down to my partner in crime here and sound engineer, Jesse Ulrich. Jesse, thanks so much for putting this thing together and making it happen.
You are welcome. I love a technical challenge.
Did you get good feedback on the last one? Because I did.
No one sent me directly feedback. I assume they sent it to you. So I'm glad that we got some good feedback for it. The numbers seem to be good. So, and people could see it. And so I'm happy.
Oh, the one I liked best was the somebody complimented my hat. Like, you have an official Red Sneaker Writers. Well, of course I do have.
Yeah.
Actually, that was swag we made up a while back for the Red Sneaker WriterCon cruise. Oh my gosh, that's making me nostalgic now. The days when people could go on cruises. We'll be back there again someday.
It's true. It's not like they were safe virus-wise beforehand. So
that's a valid point. Maybe it'll be mandatory masks in the future.
Yeah.
But we're not going to have a cruise this year, but we will have WriterCon, like always, Labor Day weekend. I know that seems a long time away, but no reason you can't plan ahead. It'll be in Oklahoma City. If you're coming in person, we stream the whole thing. You can watch it from wherever you are during the conference or after the conference. Just this week, I added 5 new guests, 2 more writers, 2 more agents, and a guy who does screenplays. Going to be added to the website. Of course, if you register early, you get the early bird prize. So you might check out WriterCon. The website is WriterCon.org and see if this might be something that might help you out with your writing ambitions. On this podcast, as you probably already know, it's probably why you're here, our very superstar special guest author is John Lescroart, the author of over 20 books, 19 of them, I think, New York Times-bestsellers, including a book that has become a seminal work in the world of legal thrillers, The 13th Juror. His most recent book, the latest, 18th, I believe, in the Dismiss Party series, is The Rule of Law. He's a founding member of International Thriller Writers, and perhaps even more impressive, a former contestant on both Tic-Tac-Toe and The Joker's Wild, which I can guarantee you I will be asking, and I'll also ask some questions that pertain to writing, because I know he has a lot of great advice for aspiring writers out there. And you will have a chance to ask questions too. Those of you who are on the live screen, just put your questions in the chat window, and after about 20 minutes or so of talking, we'll get to your questions, all right? So, interview with John Lescroart, big deal. But first, the news. First thing I wanted to talk about is the new Small Claims Copyright Board. I've talked about in the past the fact that this passed Congress and that we're actually going to have, in effect, a small claims court for copyright infringements. Well, the website is up now, and you can see it right there on the screen, those of you who are watching the video version. And let me just say, for those of you listening to the audio podcast, all of these websites, URLs will be in the show notes, so you can get the links as well. Anyway, now you've got a place where creators, including authors, can go to pursue copyright infringement cases. People you think are ripping off your work, plagiarizing, without spending a ton of money on lawyers and a lot of hassles. You can do it. You can get it started anyway, right online. Second thing I wanted to talk about, last time we talked about the boom in audiobooks and new studies that showed that people are now listening to audiobooks primarily at home, not in their cars, which I bet made some of you wonder, how can I make that happen? Of course, there are places like ACX and Findaway Voices where you can produce your own audiobooks. But there's also this outfit that you see on the screen now, Podium Audio, which is focusing on finding self-published titles on Amazon, acquiring the rights, and then producing them as audiobooks. It just recently hit 2,000 titles. So this is clearly a significant thing. If you're an author, particularly a self-published author, and you're trying to look for some way to get into audiobooks, you might want to check out Podium Audio. Another new wrinkle in the book publicity world has to do with Mark Dawson and a new service called Hello Books. You may know Mark Dawson from the self-publishing formula and his regular works and emails and seminars and whatnot. Well, now he's started a new book promotion service. Now, I haven't been able to test this. I signed up, but I haven't run it yet, and I don't know what it costs, although I know it costs something, but the fees aren't posted on the website. So like I said, I signed up, and I'll try it out and report back to you. But this is not a recommendation. This is just telling you that it exists, and stay tuned. Something I did actually try out this week was the OpenAI. That's an artificial intelligence that is supposedly able to take your ideas and transform them into sentences. I tried this out I mentioned this on a previous podcast too, but now I signed up for the beta and actually got to try it out. I gave it a bunch of sample paragraphs so it could see what my writing style is like, told it what I wanted the scene to be about, and what it produced was not as bad as you might think it would be. I don't know, Jesse. You see yourself reading books written by computers anytime in the future?
Every time there's a story about one of these, they always try to write a show, like a pop culture show, and using these AIs like a West Wing episode or like a Game of Thrones episode. Right. And they're always close to being written by a person, but the context, there's something missing. You can tell there's something missing. But as much, as much help as you can give writers, the better. I would happily let a computer write things for me. If it could write my emails and my podcast show notes for me, I'd be very happy about that.
And get it right. Yes.
Yeah.
What I was impressed with was that it did do a pretty good job of mimicking my style. At least writing with fiction tends to be sparse and to the point. I didn't think the sentences were very interesting, but who knows? At some point, you might be able to give a really detailed outline and the computer turns that into a first draft, which then you rework heavily, but it's not quite as much work as writing that first draft. This may be something people are using in the future. Okay, next story. Some of you have probably been hearing on the news about NFTs, so-called non-fungible tokens, or because the initials are NFT, some people are calling them nifties, which are basically like digital, I don't know, things, Jesse, trading cards. You're younger than I am. Help me out. I had
to try to explain this to somebody. It's like the certificate of authentication for like a painting, right?
Right.
It's like owning that, but everything is digital. So for digital art, this is the only way to have that knowledge that this is the only one, or this is the one that you paid for. Right. It's still a little silly, especially the amounts people are paying for these things. But
other people can see it, right? You just happen to own it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on what it is. Like there was a digital painting. I don't know if that digital painting is visible somewhere else or just on that person's Nifty.
Well, it was one thing when people were buying Jack Dorsey's tweets or the Kings of Leon album, but as you probably read a few days ago, somebody paid $69 million in cryptocurrency for a piece of art by somebody named Beeple, who I have never heard of in my life.
Nope.
But by gosh, he's rich now. Well, why am I bringing this up? Because there's a service out there, you see it on the screen, BookChain, which is offering to do the same thing for authors. It can take your file and convert them into one of these digital EFTs so that you can publish them on the Ethereum blockchain and sell them from their service. I have no idea if this works. I don't really even understand it, but FYI, if you're interested in this, go check out BookChain. One last story. Earlier this month, the UK-based Independent Publishers Guild hosted the International Publishing Forum. And they were pretty positive because, as if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know book sales did increase last year during the lockdown. Here's my favorite quote from it, though. Helen Kenyon, who's with Nielsen UK, was talking about global print book sales, how book sales, even print book sales are up, even during the lockdown when many bookstores were closed. But she said, and I quote, "Books saw people through the hard times." I mean, it's not just that they keep people entertained or busy or bring them comfort or motivated. Books see people through the hard times. And you know what? She's right. So, Red Sneaker Writers, next time you're having trouble getting started in the morning, can't figure out what you're going to do, and is it really worth it? And I'm not making any money, and this is such hard work. Is this worth it? You just remember, every time somebody reads one of your books, you have touched another person and have the potential to change their lives, even if only in small ways. Books see people through the hard times. All right, Jesse, why don't you bring out our guest? John, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure, Bill. How are you doing?
I am great. It's good to see you. All right, I have a traditional first question on this podcast, which, of course, I didn't warn you about at all, but I feel certain you can handle it. If you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring writer, and you could probably give 20, but if you had to pick one piece of advice to give to someone who wants to write, what would it be?
Well, that's a great question because it's got a perfect answer and it's very simple to do. What I would tell people, and I have told people to do this in my classes many, many times, what you want to do is write one page a day. That's all. If you write one page a day, you've written a novel in a year. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you the most important thing, which is actually to get something written. So many people who say they want to be writers are not necessarily interested in the procedure of writing. They're interested in having done it. Right. But once you're writing one page a day, you are up to the minute on what you can do. And you'll find that once you start at one, it'll be hard to stop at one. So you can go on and on and on. And all you know is the next day, you're going to do one page again. Right. And if you can do that, you're going to be a writer. And if you can't do it, no offense, there's a lot of other things you should be doing.
And that eliminates a lot of excuses, too. You know, I'm busy, I don't have time. You can find time to write one page, right?
Right. And you can take the weekends off, by the way.
You do that regularly. Soon people will be doing 2 pages and 3 and 4, and time will get shorter. Absolutely. How long did you spend writing before you saw anything in print?
Oh, my gosh. We're not counting in 8th grade, are we?
College or post-college?
In college, I wrote a book, my first book that I actually finished on a kind of one page a day rule. Nobody's ever seen that book. But the next book I wrote right after college. And I wrote a pastiche about Sherlock Holmes and Nero Wolfe, which I called Son of Holmes. And then I sat that in my drawer for 14 years. If you do the math, that makes me 36 when I finally broke through and got something really published.
Did it change a lot during those 16 years? Or
there was absolutely no change except the copyright date that I changed when I handed it in, because nobody wanted to see a copyright of 1970 in 1984.
Right. You've done more Sherlock Holmes stories since then, though, right?
I have. I really, I fell in love with Sherlock, and more particularly the Sherlock-Nero Wolfe connection. So I actually wound up being asked to write a sequel to Son of Holmes, which was called Rasputin's Revenge. And then, you're going to love this, because my publisher, Donald I. Fine, did not pay the Holmes estate $50 for permission. They put a court order on me saying I couldn't write any more of those books.
Wow.
The good news is that over time, that copyright has totally been lapsed and there's no argument about it now. You can write Sherlock Holmes stories.
Right.
And so I wrote another rather long one called In the Company of Sherlock Holmes a couple of years ago. It was about 75 pages long, a pretty good story.
So you did the Holmes book. How long before you got to Dismas Hardy?
Well, Dismas Hardy came as a direct result of this lawsuit that the Holmes estate was going to give me.
Yeah.
So I said, well, since I can't do Sherlock Holmes again, and I've written now 2 books, actually 3, because they picked up a paperback book of mine called Sunburn. So I was 36 years old. I had 3 books published, and I was starting to think about, well, I can't write a Sherlock Holmes book. What should I do next? And our good friend Dick Lochte in Los Angeles wrote at that moment, very fortuitously, he wrote a story about, a magazine story saying, please don't write any PI books and don't set them in LA. And I felt like he was speaking to me, the mouth of God. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? I need a fresh guy and I need a new city. And I was thinking at the time of doing a PI book set in LA. Instead, I did a non-PI book. I did an ex-lawyer bartender book set in San Francisco, named him Dismas Hardy, and away we go.
Where did that name come? I mean, is Dismas even a real name? Where did you pull that from?
Well, I'm a very good lapsed Catholic. I was raised in all Catholic schools, so I know all the saints by heart. And Dismas was the good thief on Calvary. So when he was hanging there next to Jesus, he said, this day I'll be with you in paradise. And so he was, to me, kind of the classic person to take over the onus of a character that was going to be like Dismas.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah,
so,
and then, of course, the Hardy part of it came from the Hardy Boys. And I think this was a classic, easy to remember name, Dismas Hardy, kind of like Travis McGee, kind of laid it out there, and then you could take it or leave it, but it was easy to take.
So I knew in that first book he was attending bar. I didn't realize he was an ex-attorney. He will later become an ex, right?
Right. Right. He goes, the whole vision of my first Dismas Hardy book was that he had kind of dropped out of the law because of a personal tragedy. And I'm not going to tell you what that is. You have to read the book. But it broke up his marriage. It broke up his life. It made him give up on the law. And finally, when we see him taking off in Dead Irish, he's really just, revisiting himself and finding out who he is now. And he turned out to be a pretty interesting guy.
So Dead Irish is considered the first book in the series, right? Sunburn is like a prequel or something.
Well, actually, Sunburn is a real book. It's a literary award book. It's written in all, you'll love this if you're a writer. It's written in all 3 persons, first person, second person, and third person.
Second person? Seriously?
Yeah. Chapter 6 is all second person.
Doesn't go on for long, I hope.
What's that?
I said it doesn't go on too long, I hope.
No, it's a few pages, but it's really a cool thing to have in the book, I must admit.
Okay, I got to ask, what was are you just showing that you could do it, or what was the reason for that?
Well, this was when I had just finished becoming a rock and roll, player for all my 20s. When I turned 30, I broke up my band and I sat down and started writing this book, Sunburn. And Sunburn was meant to be, let's see if I can do it kind of book. So I wrote this book set in Spain during the time that Franco was dying. And it was very interesting, actually. I sent it off to my old high school English teacher when I finished it. And I said, what do you think I should do with this? And he called me back later and he said, this is really not very good. I would just throw it away, start another book. I went, wow, that's not really great news. But then what happened is I got a call the next day, this is no kidding, from his wife, who was actually crying. She was so moved by how the book worked. And I said, are you the same person did you get the same book that Terry got, her husband? And she goes, yeah, but he's jealous of you because he hasn't finished his book yet. He said, why don't I take your book and submit it into some literary awards? And I said, wow, I don't really think it's, a literary award book, but go for it. And she did. 3 months later, I got a call from the San Francisco Foundation saying that my book, Sunburn, had won the Joseph Henry Jackson Award for Best Novel by a California Author. Mm-hmm. Changed my whole life, my whole vision of what I was going to do.
It gave you the encouragement you needed, the boost.
Right. And by the way, I literally wrote that book in about 3 months, a page or two a day.
Wow. Really? You must not revise much.
I write perfect prose.
You're one of those.
It just comes out perfect every single time. I never have to do anything.
But never done it.
I've heard of it from liars.
Yeah, right.
And we're professional liars. That's our job.
That's true. I got to ask, have you ever been tempted to go back to that first guy? I think you said his name was Terry, and send him a photocopy of your royalty statements or something?
I've been tempted, but I have not given in to that temptation.
You're too much of a nice person for that, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All of this is ringing a question in my mind, and I bet on other people's, which I hope you don't mind addressing. But sometimes people ask me, when should I quit my day job? I've written a book. Maybe I've even sold a book. Maybe it's about to come out. Can I get rid of this job I hate now and just call myself a full-time writer? What's your answer to this question?
I didn't start being a full-time writer until I was, you're not going to like this, 45 years old. So I did day jobs of every kind of description. I've been a house painter. I've been a bartender. I've been a word processor, legal departments. I've done cooking. I've done all kinds of things that were my day jobs because I couldn't make a living writing. So my advice is, until you get yourself a deal that can support you, don't quit.
Yeah.
You can still start putting on your resume that you're published 3 times, published 4 times, published 5 times. About then, maybe you're going to get lucky and get a hit.
Mm-hmm. And maybe enough in the money in the bank that you could live for 6 months to a year.
6 months to a year. Well, this will lead into that other thing you were going to be talking about, you said, and that is my game show career.
Yes.
That's an example. I probably made $50,000 or $60,000 back in the 80s when that was a lot of money. I was on Joker's Wild. I was on Blank Check. I was on Tic Tac Doe. I was on Headline Chasers. Really, me and Wink Martindale were good buddies.
I don't even know what Blank Check, and I've loved game shows since I was a kid, but I don't even know what Blank Check is. So,
Blank Check was $7,000 is what it was.
I used to watch The Joker's Wild with friends when I was in college. Maybe we saw you.
You probably did. I was actually on it twice. One time was the celebrity version, the irony being that I was not the celebrity. The celebrity for me was Hugh O'Brien, who played Wyatt Earp.
Right.
And so he and I were partners, and he didn't do very well on the game. So that's why I got to go on to the second time, because Wink Martindale pulled me aside and said, well, that didn't give you much of a shot. Why don't you try another one? This time you can be independent and do it on your own. So I got on and I won $14,000. And I said, thank you very much.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, such a nerd, but The Joker's Wild, that was Jack Barry's show, right? It was
Jack Barry, but Wink Martindale was kind of his mentor or his mentoree.
Yeah, right. He was old school. Right. He'd done some of those 50s quiz shows, and
he really was the man. Yeah.
But that was pretty straightforward answering questions. Did you get nervous, or was it fun?
It's just nothing but fun. Me, it was goofy to be on the show to begin with, and then it was just fun backstage. Everybody's laughing, and the guys like Wink are pretty funny guys to hang out with. So they just get you riled up and get you going, and then you go out and you hopefully answer a question or two.
Right. All right, enough indulging myself. We should probably talk about books and writing again. So, more controversy. You have for some time now been writing, you may not love the term, legal thrillers, lawyer novels, courtroom dramas. I don't know. What do you call them?
I call them legal thrillers generally, or crime thrillers.
Okay.
Because part of it, the writing of the legal part, is a little hard for me because I'm not a lawyer.
That's where I was going, yeah. But has that been a problem? I mean, I can't think of another person in this field who is not actually a lawyer, but...
you're right. I think I may be the only guy that's writing legal thrillers. Although maybe Michael Conley now with the Lincoln Lawyer guy, I don't think he's an attorney.
Right.
He's a hell of a writer, but he's not an attorney.
Right.
But anyway, so I wrote about 6 or 8 of these legal thrillers, and they were real legal thrillers. And I got to the point that I said, I don't know what I'm writing about anymore here. I turned to my best buddy, who's named Al Giannini, who was a lawyer and is a lawyer still. And he was the guy who was basically telling me what I did wrong on every book. So I finally decided, well, I'm going to keep the good part of the crime part, and I'm not going to do the legal part. Then I invented another character named Wyatt Hunt. And now he's got 3 or 4 books of his own. Mm-hmm. And they are crime thrillers, not legal thrillers.
You've got another series character too, right?
Abe Blitzky.
Yeah.
Oh, I got him. It's the same thing I went through when I was writing Sunburn. Well, you got all this stuff, but the kitchen sink, you got to throw it all in there. Or you got to fill those pages. So if you're doing 1 page a day or 10 pages a day, whatever it may be, you got to have a lot of characters in there. So I've had a female protagonist. I've had a black male detective. I've got my ex-lawyers. I got women, lots of guys. It's a lot of fun.
Of course, today you might run into some criticism if you write a lead character who's different gender or different race. Is that ever
that whole appropriation of culture thing,
right,
is something I really have a difficult time with, because I think that's part of the whole vision of what writers do, is they try to inhabit another reality than their own. And to the degree that they're successful, they shouldn't, I don't think, be castigated for that at all.
Has there been a moment you've been writing for decades now. Do you remember a moment when you were sitting there writing and you thought, and then you had the aha moment where you suddenly realized something about writing or some way to do it better or something you didn't realize before?
What's interesting, I think the biggest thing is happened just recently, is I finished the Rule of Law, and I decided I was going to take a year off, a sabbatical. And little did I know that I would really not like being off for a year. Now I have a new book coming out in November of this year. It's called The Missing Piece, and it's a Hardy Glitzky novel. And I was so glad to get back to writing and to feel like I was doing what I was meant to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a good question, though. I agonized over it, to tell you the truth.
That's what writing is sometimes, though, right? And eventually...
It's a lot of agony. There's a lot of agony.
Make a decision.
Right.
All right. Well, let's see what questions are coming in. There it is from Karen Bullock, who I know to be a fine writer. Do you find that your characters exhibit traits of your personality that you have, or traits that you wish you had?
That's the question? Yes. Yeah. My characters very strongly, especially at the very beginning when I was trying to figure out who Dismas Hardy was, who Abe Blitzky was. Hardy, I just made him an ex-Marine, which I was not, and an ex-lawyer, which I was not, and an ex-father, which at that time I was not. And there were all kinds of things that led into the making of his character. And I just basically stole from my own life, because I had been a bartender at the Little Shamrock, the same Little Shamrock that Hardy was in. I definitely knew all about working in law firms because I was working as a typist in a law firm. So all of these various things, I was raised, as I said earlier, a good Catholic boy, which is what Hardy was, same kind of thing. I had been divorced. He had been divorced. I brought all this stuff to the table, and they congealed into being this character who I knew I could live with for a long time. And the same thing with Abe Blitzky. Abe Blitzky's an interesting mix of ethnicities. He's half Jewish and half black. And my best friend, second best friend probably in the world, is my old guitar partner, Alan Haidt, who's got that same ethnic mixture, who's now a dentist in Santa Cruz, California. And a great, great guy. We still talk to each other all the time. So yes, I'd say I use a lot of stuff from my own life and experience.
Is there a point where you can do too much of it, that you're writing autobiography and it's kind of canceling out your imagination?
I don't really think that's ever happened. I mean, I've really tried to be aware when I'm using it to bolster a character's ego, and also when I'm trying to tell a story. But then I'm perfectly willing to drop it off and drop that character trait off if I need it for the plot.
So in November, this will be the 19th Dismas Hardy book.
Actually, it's going to be my 30th book.
30th book, but 19th in the series, right?
Oh, is it that? I really don't know, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's what Amazon says. I looked this morning.
Okay.
Is there a point when this has gone on too far? I mean, how long can you do this?
Well, I just started. I literally wrote page 2 and 3 today before I'm on here with you. And I just started another book because I finished the editing on The Missing Piece. In fact, I'll show you this. Here it is. The Missing Piece. Da-da-da.
That's in November. So we'll have to have you back in November to talk about it.
Right. That'll be fun. But anyway, Missing Piece comes out then, and I don't remember what I was talking about.
It's all right. So, John, do you pay attention to what book critics and book reviewers say?
Well, I almost make it a habit not to look at any of them. I'm generally happy to get some nice ones if that happens, but I really don't like to go back and look because there's so much really kind of uncritical criticism that I find tedious and boring and take out my joy in life. So I really don't pay much attention.
Now, for me,
who cares at this point?
Yeah,
if some people don't like me, some people don't like me, but I know that a lot of people do, and I concentrate on the positive.
I find myself not being very interested in what like pro reviewers say, or somebody who's getting $25 to write a review for PW or something. Right. But I'm really interested in what people who have actually read the book will say and post on Amazon. And it's not always nice, but still, I think this is valid. This person who spent some money and bought and read my book. Right.
Well, I love hearing from my readers, and I would say literally 90. This is going to sound weird, but it's true. 99% of what I get is positive. Now, maybe they're just the people who are moved to write me, but I mean, I love coming in every day because literally every day I get 2 to 10 emails just saying, some of them saying you've changed my life. Yeah. Some of them saying you're my favorite writer. Almost none of them saying I'm never going to read you again because you're a pig. No. Almost never.
Almost.
All right, Jesse, shoot us another question. So, John, when you start a new book, do you begin with the character first, or the plot first, or the plot second and the character first, or how's it work?
I'm very religious about this, actually. It's the first sentence. That's what it starts with, the first sentence. And I agonize over what that is going to be because that's the thing that's going to draw the reader into the book. And if you have a good first sentence, you win. So I sit down and maybe sometimes I'll take a whole day of writing, sentences, just like the great first line that you really want. And that's really it. I guess that's what I can say. That's what gets me started.
To some extent, if you go in and knowing, okay, I've got to do I get to do another Dismas Hardy book, then you know who the lead character is.
Right.
Then you got to come up with a plot. What is the biggest change in the industry? And by that, I think they mean the publishing industry, which has gone through a lot of changes in the past decade or so. What's the biggest change in the industry?
Wow. Well, I feel like I'm living in a reality that is not there anymore. I mean, all of my early books, there was a great deal of excitement when things were really popping on the legal thriller front. Right. And I have found now that there are just so many more books published. Like, I think last year there were 68,000 novels published in America. And back when I started, there were probably, let's get wild, 600. And the difference there is just the glut on the market that makes people work harder to find the things they like. And there's all kinds of scams going around about number one on Amazon. Number one on Amazon being the 1 second that it hit number one, because you had your whole
screenshot.
You had your whole family there, and everybody hit the send button at the same time. And literally for 30 seconds, you were the number one bestseller in Amazon, and you sold maybe a total of 40 books. Right. Not to sound simple, but that's the biggest change. 60,000 versus 600.
What about ebooks and the digital world and online books, which we might not have survived this past year without online booksellers?
No, that's true.
How has that changed the world?
I haven't noticed that much of a change in my books because I've got contracts, luckily, and the contracts define what's going to be, and that's why I just follow that along. That's what I do.
You've mentioned a couple times that you're a musician. I know for a fact that you've got a couple CDs out there that you have made. I've heard you play guitar at conferences. You're a fantastic musician. Do you still dabble with that? Is there going to be another? Actually, you had it was Johnny Capo. That was the name you used as a musician.
Got it, Johnny
right?
Capo. That's right. Johnny Capo and his real good band. That was who I was in my 20s. And I wrote a couple of books during that time as well. But then, as I told you, when that kind of dried up on my 30th birthday, because I just quit, I said, 30 years old, I can't be trusted. I'm not going to be a rock and roll star. So anyway, I put together a couple of CDs, and I'm just about to come out with a third one, as a matter of fact, what's it called? It's called Demos and Covers, because a few other people have sung my songs, and I'm going to bring out those songs which are my original tunes, but sung by better singers than I am. And they're really fun to listen to, and that should be out in the next couple of weeks.
Available on your webpage or?
Available on my webpage, yeah.
Fantastic.
And just between you and me, I think we got to get about 1,000 of them out there. Boom, boom, boom.
Uh-huh.
So we're counting on you to mention it next week.
And I will. What's the name of the CD again?
Demos and Covers.
Jesse, remember that. We'll start the show next time. That'll be at the top. Go buy John's CD. I saw another question. This may be the last one. Do you read other thrillers? I assume that means thrillers written by other people.
Yes,
I
do.
You read Sherlock Holmes.
My favorites, besides you, of course, Bill, but my favorites really, truly, are, I love C.J. Box. I know he's really hot right now, and I think he's fantastically talented. I like Don Winslow. I like John Sanford. There's a bunch of really talented people out there, and I know I'm not saying all of them. But yes, I'm a pretty voracious reader, and I tend to read a little bit in our genre.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy it, or is it market research?
No. I mean, I'll tell my accountants that it's research, but really it's because I just love these books.
And do you find yourself editing when you read other, man, too many helping verbs? Or what?
No. If I need to edit too much, I put the book down gently and say that's enough. But none of these people that I just mentioned are having that problem, believe me.
Do you remember, looking back, because I know a lot of people are interested in this, we have a lot of people who are writing very hard, trying to get work out there, looking for an agent or trying to decide whether to go the KDP self-publish route. And what's your advice right now for people? You've said, of course, that people should write every day, write 1 page a day, but taking it beyond that into the whole marketing and finding agents and publishers and all that kind of stuff, which is so onerous, I think, sometimes for people that they just end up giving up. Sometimes it's more tougher to find an agent than a publisher.
Hard though it may be, you have to have an agent. I think you need an agent to make a living in this business. And if you can't get an agent, you may take it as an indication that maybe you're not meant to be a writer. On the other hand, there's nobody out there who's writing who hasn't been rejected once or twice. I mean, maybe Nelson DeMille, I understand, never got a rejection letter. But I got, believe me, 25, 30, 40 of them. And I kept just slugging away and believing in myself and thinking I was doing, some pretty good work. And then eventually luck happened and I got celebrity famous. Stupid. But
you got to hang in there. And
yeah, you got to. As I told you earlier, I was 45 years old before I quit my day jobs.
And you'd been writing regularly for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I've been writing since I was 25. So 20 years to overnight success, right?
That's what I usually don't expect overnight success. Just don't quit. And eventually, you got the right book in the right place at the right time, and it starts to come together.
Ironically enough, one of the things that makes the difference is just plain old luck. Because I wrote the 13th Juror, and I didn't get a big advance. I got a lot of people to pass on it, and it was at my publishers. And suddenly, the O.J. Simpson trial started. Okay, and I went from being nobody to the guy who had written the book about the O.J. Simpson case. Although it wasn't really O.J. Simpson at all, but it was about the battered women syndrome. Right. And in the next 3 months, I was on the radio 140 times as basically the country's guru about the battered women syndrome. And that's the thing that drove the sales of the 13th Juror in paperback, I might add. And all of a sudden, I had 1 million books sold, and people knew my name. And it wasn't that different a book than any other book I'd written, but it was just the right book at the right time. Thank goodness.
Yeah, luck is a lot more likely to happen though if you've been writing every day and you've got some
if you have stuff out there, right?
Chance favors and it occurs to me sitting here that 13th Juror, fabulous book, was chosen for the Thrillers 100 must-reads anthology, meaning it's one of the best. I think I'm down in the 600s or so, but you're in the top 100. And that was a collection. That's a collection that was edited by our last guest, David Morrell, who knows more about thrillers than anybody.
Sure.
John, this has been great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We'll bring you back in November when the new book comes out, and sometime we got to get you out to WriterCon so everybody can meet and greet in person. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Take care.
And thank everybody else who joined us this time. Remember, want more wisdom from great writers, publishers, agents, chance to pitch people? Think about WriterCon. WriterCon.org is the website. It's Labor Day weekend. You can come in person or stream whatever works best for you. And in the meantime, remember what John just said. Start writing that page or 2 or 3, whatever you can manage, every day or as often as you can. And eventually it adds up to a book. So till next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit.